While waiting for the program to begin, we would like everyone to be reminded with the following house rules. First, as usual, you are requested to turn your microphones off. This is to help us focus on the active presentation shared on screen. You may want to turn your cameras off as well. For the presenters, please turn your cameras and microphones on during the open forum only. Second, you are encouraged to ask questions to our speaker and oral presenters using the Zoom chat box. Kindly send your questions this time directly to Ms. Laika Lamoste. Again, please direct your questions privately using the Zoom chat box to Ms. Laika Lamoste. These questions will be acknowledged and asked by your host at an allotted time at the end of this stream. Third, you are reminded that this conference is also streamed real-time to selected audiences via YouTube. Best of the morning, presenters and participants. This might be the last, but still, welcome to the third day of AteneoServe 2020. Yesterday, Father Johnny of the AteneoServe reminded us to embrace uncertainty despite facing this challenging scenario as a teacher adapting to the online learning for the first time. Relating the experience with how scientists did science before, he assured us that in this journey where we are stumbling in the dark and navigating without a map, being adventurous and courageous would eventually lead us to create such map in order to discover where the light switch is. This light switch is our goal to deliver quality science education to young Filipinos. After which, we were stunned by the well-thought presentations on the use of disaster readiness risk reduction website, urban agriculture, used bottles, and PhET simulations as asynchronous activities for learning. Lastly, we have heard the progress of science education in terms of environmental literacy, science process skills, and spiral progression of geology in junior high school. Definitely, today, despite being the last day, is another opportunity to gain learning experiences grounded by sound research from fellow educators. You must be excited, huh? Now, may I call on Mr. John Oliver Distor from the MS Science Education Batch 2018 to introduce our plenary speaker.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to introduce to you and welcome our plenary speaker for this day and the conference chair of this year's Ateneo Science Educators and Researchers Virtual Engagement 2020, Ms. Gladys Ann O. Malto. She will be presenting her collaborative study with Ms. Carmina S. Dalida and Dr. Catherine Genevieve V. Lagunsad. Gladys and Mina are both graduates of the Master of Science in Science Education program of the Ateneo de Manila University. They are two of the pioneer graduates of the DOST-SEI National Consortium in Graduate Science and Mathematics Education, or NCGSME, scholarship, which is now known as the Capacity Building Program in Science and Mathematics Education, or CBPSME, under the Department of Biology and School of Science and Engineering of Ateneo. Gladys took her bachelor's degree in secondary education, major in general science at the National Teachers College, where she later served as a part-time college instructor and full-time high school teacher for almost 10 years. Currently, she is a special science teacher at the Philippine Science High School main campus. She is handling grade 8 students and a coach for earth science-related competitions. She had several memberships and affiliations, including AIC Indonesia, APCOR, and Philippine Physics Society. Her researches are focused on flipped classroom approach in biology teaching, where she received Nemesio E. Prudente Excellence in Research Award in Bali, Indonesia last 2018. Truly, she is one of the Ateneo MSSA pride. And without any further ado, let us welcome Ms. Gladys Ann O. Malto.
Scholars and academicians, a pleasant morning to all of us. We would like to thank the Ateneo for giving us the opportunity to discuss our research work. On behalf of my co-authors, Dr. Catherine Jenny Biblagunsad and Ms. Carmina S. Dalida, allow me to present our study entitled Differentiated Instruction under Blended Learning, Maximizing Students' Engagement. We hope that in sharing our study and highlighting its significant findings, we can be of help as you navigate the new landscape of science education during this crisis situation, wherein distance learning becomes a standard. We have to understand that in mainstream classes, students differ in terms of experiences, learning styles, strengths, abilities, readiness, and needs. Thus, using a one-size-fits-all method of teaching may not be effective in bringing out the best possible academic performance for all students in a class, especially at this time of pandemic. Therefore, we have to think of strategies that can be helpful in addressing differences among students online and offline, while maintaining expectations in achieving learning competencies. In this study, differentiated instruction, a pedagogical framework that involves providing various teaching and assessment strategies based on the different abilities of the students, was implemented. It aims to maximize learners' engagement while adapting blended learning by giving students the chance to experience a balance of shared, guided, and independent instruction activities or strategies. Differentiated instruction has the following principles: flexible, engaging, reasonable, and systematic. Flexible because it can allow short-term groupings for students to work with peers of the same or different strengths and interests. Engaging because interesting tasks can be given for all learning preferences, interests, and level of readiness. Reasonable as it introduces well-constructed choices that address needs and strengths of students. Also, it is systematic because it follows routines, procedures, and classroom agreements. This study has the following 4 objectives. First, to utilize differentiated instruction in teaching science for high school level, measure any significant effect of differentiated instruction in students' level of engagement, determine the impact of differentiated instruction on students' level of engagement and achievement, to investigate any correlation between students' level of engagement and achievement. For the framework of this study, as you can see in the diagram, in this study, 2 phases of instructions were followed: the online and the face-to-face. While implementing differentiated instruction, you will notice in the diagram that the 5E model was employed. During online instruction delivery, students were motivated to engage and explore through use of formative assessment to evaluate students' learning progress, wherein the results of which the teacher will use as a guide for designing differentiated classroom activities and different tasks. While during face-to-face interaction, students were given the chance to explain and elaborate on what they have learned. This time, summative assessment was used to evaluate students' overall academic performance. And these particular 2 phases of instruction affects students' engagement and as well achievement. Also, in this study, the ADDIE model for differentiated instruction was utilized. Okay? ADDIE stands for analysis to determine the driving forces why we need to differentiate learning. Second is to design the different learning outcomes, assessment instruments, lesson plans, and also media selection, which means you have to consider what fits our learners. And then we can start already developing materials. After the development, it's now the time to implement different sets of activities to learners, and finally, to evaluate learning and the strengths and weaknesses of the instructional activities being implemented. But the question is, how do we differentiate? It follows actually a particular cycle. And there are 4 different key points that is very important, that are very important to consider in differentiation. First is the content, what the students need to learn, how the students access the information they have to learn. In this study for content, we prepared reading materials with varying readability level, videos and podcasts that can be used as resources. While in the learning environment, it is very important to consider that classroom must be convenient and create sense of community for the students. And for the process, it is very important to consider that along the process, you have to engage the students to manipulative or hands-on activities for them to develop mastery of the content. And of course, for the product, it's very important to consider culminating projects or outputs that requires the student to rehearse, apply, and extend what they have learned in a particular unit. For this study, it follows 4 different parts or methods in differentiating. To plan and design the online classroom, self-learning and pre-assessment, understanding the lesson, and last, application of new understanding. For the first, teacher created an online class using the platform Edmodo, wherein students were allowed to enroll online and prepared concept articles, PowerPoint presentations, video clips were uploaded online for students to access. And for the pre-assessment, there were different materials, assessment materials made and serve as a basis for grouping the students and for planning and assigning learning tasks. And for the understanding of the lesson, in every lesson, students were given guide questions to answer as they watch lectures at home or online. And for the application of new understanding, demonstrating mastery of the lessons learned were done in the classroom by completing group tasks, accomplishing individual worksheets, and producing creative outputs. However, with the use of appropriate learning management system, these two can be done online during virtual class interaction. Let me share to you the different differentiated instruction strategies used in this study. We have here 3 examples: the tiered activities, tic-tac-toe, and flexible grouping. For the tiered activities, assignments were assigned and tasks are varying in terms of level of difficulty. Okay, wherein methods that varies the level of assignments, so all students have a chance to find success and progress. And some works are more difficult and challenging compared to the others. For the tic-tac-toe, it allows students to choose how to show understanding about concepts by giving variety of activities to choose from. And for flexible grouping, it allows students to interact with one or more peers to build community, to increase engagement while having an active learning. Let me show you the different materials that we use in this study. For the tiered activities, these are the learning kits that we prepared, from making a timeline to constructing Venn diagram up to explaining what DNA replication is. And for the tic-tac-toe, as you can see, we have here 3 grid lines, consist of 9 different activities, wherein students have to complete 3 tasks. They can choose a straight path or diagonal path. For example, For example, you're going to use this straight line, make a timeline about the discovery of DNA, design an infographic about causes and effects of mutation, cut out and arrange the structure of DNA and RNA nucleotide. Or they can go diagonally, wherein they have to make a timeline about the discovery of DNA, complete a graphic organizer to show the roles or functions of DNA, and last, to make an illustration on how DNA replicates. So that is an example of a tic-tac-toe activity. Next is for the flexible grouping. In here, flexible grouping allows the teacher to just facilitate learning. Under this time of pandemic, we can do virtual discussion and presentation. We can make sub-rooms, or we can have, we can split classes for them to have particular groupings. Now, let me show you the results and discussion of this study. In the analysis of data, both descriptive and inferential statistics were used. And based on the findings of this study, Figure 1 shows graphically that differentiated group has higher achievement in science. And based on the gain score analysis, it shows that the two groups have significant difference in terms of gain scores as revealed by the p-value of less than 0.001 in favor of the differentiated group. And also, in terms of level of engagement, it also shows that the two groups have significant difference in terms of gain performance as revealed by the p-value of less than 0.001 is still in favor of the differentiated group. Let me correct, I should say gain engagement. While in figure 2, we tried to see a possible correlation between the students' engagement and achievement in science. And based on figure 2, it shows that the students' level of engagement is moderately correlated with achievement in science as confirmed by the R value of 0.627 at 0.05 level of significance. This implies that as the students' engagement under differentiated instruction improves, their level of achievement also increases. For the conclusion and recommendations, the utilization of differentiated instruction promotes engagement in learning science, remarkably increased students' level of interaction in learning science. And these positive effects on the students' level of engagement may have resulted to a better understanding of scientific concepts that translated to improved academic achievement. Also, the results of this study can help teachers in designing classrooms, learning materials, and instruction delivery under the new normal. Development of appropriate and authentic learning activities can go a long way in keeping students engaged and can help ensure that their learning is not compromised, even as they are forced to constantly switch between real world and virtual classroom in response to crisis situations. But the question is, how can our study be helpful in the new normal? So I will show you some recommendation for the new normal based on our studies. Since teachers and students cannot meet each other in usual class or in a regular basis, we can devise ways for students to manage their own learning. But before the actual, we can try to make them prepare themselves first through an activity that will bring them fun. An example here is a guided learning. In our school, together with my co-teachers, we design what we call the Pisay Bingo. The IS2 or Pisay edition, wherein students will be allowed to answer this bingo card for them to check themselves as they prepare for the online learning. The important thing here is a very clear instruction on how the students are going to complete the task, where to submit, when to submit, and the proper specifications that they have to follow. For the actual learning already, one way is to compose their own lesson, okay? As what is done in a usual class, wherein they have to research and take down notes to make their own diagrams and illustration. An example is the academic notebook. This is an example of the guidelines that we use on how to make their notebooks for the students. As you can see here in the notebook specifications, there are things that they have to consider. First, the note space, what are the different labels that they have to follow, what are the different lesson content that the teachers are expecting to see on their notebooks, And of course, train them to include their references as they go with their learning. Or you can also add flavor of your own, like the different icons that you want to see for you to be guided in checking. And then you can ask them to scan their notes, take a picture, and then upload to the platform or online classroom. In this case, we use the Google Classroom as the platform for the students' online learning. Basically, it's not actually online, but rather there is enough time for them, an ample time for them to submit and to navigate the different materials that they have to follow. And of course, there must be a clear instruction on what topics are they going to make for their own notes. And then they should be reminded also that they have to feel free to contact their teachers for questions and clarifications. Let me show you an example of an academic notebook from our students. For figure 3, you can see here a sample notebook showing the atomic structure. So you can see this, the learner make a summary of the atomic structure, something like a timeline. And in figure 4, this is a sample notebook about force and motion. On the left side, you can see the different types of forces like applied force, normal force, frictional force, tension force. And on the other side, the balanced forces versus the unbalanced forces. Now, what did we realize in implementing this? That at this time of pandemic, students are confined at home, wherein their notebooks can be, first, an integral tool in helping individual students become more engaged. Second, the students can consider this as their gold mine. Why? Because it contains valuable information or resources. And also, it can serve as tracker of students' progress, because from their notebooks, teacher can understand their capabilities. And of course, serves as an avenue for students to demonstrate their understanding. Another thing is contextualized learning. At this time of pandemic, students are, like what I've said, they are confined at home. So contextualized instruction is very useful, or can be very useful. In this example, we use old pictures of precise sports which can be related to our lesson about forces and Newton's laws of motion. Like their favorite sport, the ultimate frisbee, soccer game, and the rocket launching. Students can relate easier to the lesson while using familiar situations as example of them. They will be able to construct meaning based on their own experiences. So here, we highlighted the precise sports and Newton's laws of motion, the ultimate frisbee. In this example, we use rocket launching activity. The criterion to be used also is indicated for the students' output and to be clear for them on how are they going to be graded. And then another thing is the stop and go. This is very interesting. Why? Stop and go because we need to integrate physical and intellectual breaks during online presentations. Teachers should accommodate students who are not physiologically comfortable learning in a stayed position, meaning we can allow students time to contemplate and jot down. So how are we going to do that? We can introduce open-ended relevant questions or ideas to be shared with peers, and we can encourage the submission of creative outputs. Example here is an investigating activity about ions at home. They can roam around and then they can make infographics about the different ions at home. It's very important to show them the specifications that they have to follow. Another example is for stop and go is the AHA paper. An AHA paper is an example of a short narrative of students learning in science. You can use that also in other subjects. It comprises one's realization and insights to show comprehension of the topic. This paper shall be written after exploring the assigned topics that you have given them. Example here that we use is the building atoms and simple machines for physics part. AHA is an acronym that means the following. A stands for amazing things that I have learned or they have learned. H stands for how is it possible? How did it happen? And A stands for application of these concepts in my life as a student or as a student per se. But of course, again, it's very important to give them a clear specifications, like what paper or what type of paper are they going to write their answers? Is there a minimum and maximum pages that they have to consider? And of course, it is very encouraged to have a very concise answer. Where to submit and what are the different criteria for grading? Okay, like clarity of ideas, completeness of work, neatness, and so on. So that ends my presentation. I would like to end my presentation here. I would like again to thank my team, Dr. Lagunsad and Ms. Dalida. Also, I would like to thank the National Teachers College, Philippine Science High School Main Campus, the DOST-SEI, and the Ateneo de Manila University for allowing us to make this noble endeavor possible. Ad Maiorem Dei Gloria.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gladys Mato, for that very interesting study of yours. I really find differentiated instruction something relevant despite, regardless of the condition that we are facing right now. Because as the more we understood the learning styles of our students, the more we should cater their interests so that they could learn more than what we wanted for them. Okay, so let's have the open forum, maybe. Okay.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Um,
Thank you so much.
okay, kindly allow me to read some questions to our plenary speaker from the Zoom chat box. Okay. Wait, this is a lengthy one. I find the use of academic notebook very helpful, even in the students at early grades. I firmly believe that students should learn how to take down notes and make their notebook just like their own personal learning diary. In a classroom where one might have the luxury, probably of owning a tablet, and probably insist of using that as his or her academic notebook, while others might have a physical notebook but of limited resources, what are the things that we teachers should bear in mind to address this?
Thank you, Mark. So with regards to the academic notebook, I was really inspired by this by some senior teachers, and also one from Ateneo. One teacher inspired me on how to utilize the academic notebook. I remember Dr. Valera always keep on telling us that whenever you learn something, it is very important not to just look at the screen of your gadget, but also you have to write. Okay, so with regards to the question, how are we going to address those issues? You have to be clear to your students about the things they have to consider. Why do they need to have their academic notebook? Like for example, number one, let them understand that doing their notebook will make them able to communicate well to the teacher through writing, since we cannot have or we have limited chance to do the face-to-face. And another thing is that you have to let them establish self-motivation. They have to be well self-disciplined, and commitment for them is very important because at this time that the teacher is not around all the time, they have to remain or they have to stay responsible of their own learning. They have to manage their own learning. And number 3 point is they have to apply what they have learned through their academic notebook, because that is the only way for that, or one way for the teacher to track their progress. That's it. And it's quite alarming kasi at this point in time that our learners are very fond of using gadgets rather than taking down note. They will just take a picture of it.
Yes.
But we have to understand that. And I would like to quote one statement of an unknown author, which I always keep on telling my students. You hear and you forget. You write and you remember. And you do and you understand. So that's the thing that we also posted in our G classroom. That's why our students are very motivated in writing their academic notebook.
Thank you,
Thank
Miss
you.
Glads. I love the quotation. That's very becoming of a Miss Universe of you. Kidding aside,
Wow.
I acknowledge that the gadget actually or the device that the students are using may not be something that is of matter for now. What really matters is we ask the students to, I mean, we teach the students the value of responsibility so that whatever device they are using, they
Yes.
would still follow the activities that's being given in class. Thank you. I like that response.
Yes.
Okay, let's have another question. As we learned from Father Go yesterday, we only choose the content
Mhm.
that we will teach. Likewise, according to DepEd teachers, they must only choose the most essential content. Yeah. Do you think that there are at least essential concepts in science that we teachers could not choose in our content?
Well, it's very important right now to consider the most essential. Like like in PSI, the PSI system come up with a team wherein they are the one designing for the abridged curriculum, wherein they are going to choose what are basically the most essential concept that we have to consider. Um, and what are the things that we need to take note on this? First, the most essential in terms of two aspects. Number one, what are the concepts that they can use practically in real life situation? And of course, what are the concepts that they have to carry going to the next level as they go on with their academic journey? And to consider the most essential thing, also we can promote integration not only across science subjects but also to the other subjects like humanities and other non natural sciences, because we have to consider that in teaching science or teaching science skills and concepts, it is actually it can actually cut across all disciplines. So rather than giving project or introducing the lesson in just one discipline, other teachers can collaborate so that we can have just one project for our students. So that's one
Okay.
thing.
uh,
Yes.
Thank you. Let's proceed to our next question. Miss Gladys, thank you very much for sharing us your study. I find the approaches very interactive, engaging, and importantly, student-centered. My question is, how do you intend to apply these strategies in an online classroom? I hope you can give specific examples.
Oh, well, when we did this study, it is not yet, we are not facing a crisis like this. So we were able to apply the activities through face-to-face interaction. So while they go inside the classroom, that's the time for our students to demonstrate learning. But for this new normal or during this time that we are limited in terms of face-to-face interaction, we can actually use different platforms like we can have sub rooms in virtual classroom, but since it is not doable most of the time because of limited access to the learners, what we can do is to ask them to come up with more creative outputs wherein they can choose how are they going to demonstrate their learning.
Okay. So perhaps creative outputs such as videos, pictures, and
Infographic
audio
could do,
features,
yeah.
infographics, yeah, anything that can be done using a computer gadget. Thank you. Okay. Next, your research is very useful. Thank you for sharing your study. I just want to know how are you able to assure that the competencies were met and the assessment was fair for all the different tasks given? Yeah.
Yeah, very good question, Sir Mark. Actually, if you notice in the example of activities that I presented earlier, we in PSI we are very clear in terms of specifications. What are the different things that you have you have to put in your output? We actually give them the specific format, what are the things that we are expecting them to write on their output. So specification or the clear instruction for the learners is very important. That's the only thing that we can assure that they have to we have to be fair in terms of competencies, well guided and um, well explained to them.
Okay. Um, we have another comment, a nice comment here. You have an interesting study. I agree as well. How did you measure the students' engagement? What instrument was used in measuring the variable?
Oh, actually, in this study, we adopted the attitudinal questionnaire or inventory from the American Biology Teachers Association. So that's already a standardized or validated tool. So we adapted that. Actually, not only the level of engagement, generally we measure the attitude. So one is confidence level and the engagement or interest of the students. So that's we use the tool from the American Biology Association.
Okay. Let's have another question here. Um, those are very good notebooks created by students. How long were they given to create the task? Were the students given a chance to share their experiences in creating such notebooks to determine if they enjoyed it or if they had a hard time?
Well, actually, since we faced the quarantine period, we gave them already all the topics, and we gave them the since it's self-paced, they have enough time wherein they will just upload their notebooks in a given time, and then we give comments just in case they come up with some alternative conception. That's the time we give comments. And the good thing that we employed here is um, all the integrated science teacher are available online to answer the students as they upload their notebook. So no time constraint for them, but we give them around few months, because that's few months or weeks for them to present their notebooks, and they enjoyed it. Practically, they can apply their skills in art also.
I think everybody would have a good time. I mean, enjoying making their own notebooks kasi there's the
Yes,
sense of ownership eh. Kasi it's something that
yes,
would describe their identity or something that
yes,
would reflect their interest. So I think
and
notebooks are really
yeah,
nice.
and even as teachers, we can know our students better. Just like
Yes.
whenever we read their outputs, you can really actually hear from them.
It's like seeing them in a more
Yeah.
personal level. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Let's have another question. Just for clarification, what is meant by readability level in the selection of reading material content?
Well, actually, in terms of readability level, we have to consider also some students who are visually inclined, and some who are really good in terms of if if if, if it contains a lot of text, it might not be catchy for the students. They will get bored. So sometimes we have to include also. It has to be concise and yet very clear. That's why we have to shortlist also the resources that we have to give them to for access. And
Okay.
that's the good thing in our study, Sir Mark. I would like to recognize Dr. Lagunsad for allowing us to use some of her materials in the original study. Um, and I can say that's culture fair, because we use Philippine settings in most of the examples, and eventually we can adapt that.
Actually, I also commend that it's one of
Uh,
the pride of the MS science education community that the advisors that are assigned to us or the advisors that we choose are
yes,
really helpful or are really relevant, are really of good
yes,
help in
true,
giving us ideas to improve
yes.
our thesis or study. This is not actually a question; it's a commendation. Thank you. I learned a lot from your presentation. Okay,
Thank you
I
very
think this will
much.
be the last question from our list here. This just came in. I have to. How can we collaborate with other subjects to come up with thematic teaching?
Oh, very good question, because most of our educators now are actually applying the cross-cutting um, framework in order to choose the most essential and to come up with a more thematic topics that we can introduce to our learners. So number one important thing that we have to consider among teacher is a constant articulation. We have to give time for the teachers to do meeting, and you have to articulate and revisit what are the things that what are the competencies that you already achieve and further to conduct or to use in the next level. So articulation is very important.
Yeah. Okay, so this would be, I guess, the last question for our plenary speaker for today. You have mentioned a while ago the contextualization of learning. What is the best feature that we have to consider in contextualizing learning? Are there any form of activities that you might suggest to better contextualize learning? And how can we do good assessment of these activities?
Okay. So if you notice, in my example a while ago, we use the favorite sports of our students because I really believe that whenever you introduce something interesting to them, you can catch them or you can allow them to draw meaning on their own because they can easily relate to the example. So that's one thing. You have to think as a teacher. You should know your learners. What are their interests, and you use that as an example. In that sense, you can already start contextualizing through that way.
Okay, thank you, Miss Gladys, for your responses to our questions.
Yes, Mark.
Maybe we can entertain some questions to our faculty who are around in the Zoom
Oh.
meeting. Dr. Lagunzad. I think I've seen Dr. Chris as well. Dr. Ivan, anyone?
Nothing to say here except I feel the pride
Wow.
of a,
Thank
of a
you, ma'am.
mentor. I feel the pride of the mentor, and to think that this is a product of the Ateneo de Manila University,
Wow. Thank you, ma'am.
we feel forever grateful to see that you have been blessed, that you have been able to pass it
Wow.
forward, and that you are
Speechless.
able to contribute meaningfully to science education in the country. My love to
Thank you,
you,
ma'am.
Gladys.
Thank you, ma'am. So
Thank you, Doc.
overwhelming.
I think if the advisors are grateful, what more the advices are, di ba? In having this advice, in having these advisors, mentors, second parents that guided us in our study and in our entire graduate school life. So thank you very much to all our advisors. Thank you again, Miss Gladys Malto, for your
Thank you,
very
Mark.
interesting talk. Let's now proceed by calling again Mr. Distor to present the certificate of recognition to our plenary speaker.
Ateneo de Manila University School of Science and Engineering, in collaboration with alumni, students, and DOST scholars of the MS in Science Education program of the Department of Biology. This certificate of recognition is given to Gladys Ann O. Malto for serving as plenary speaker on differentiated instruction under blended learning, maximizing students' engagement as part of the virtual conference organized by the science educators and researchers in virtual engagement at AteneoServe 2020 with the theme Digital Transformation to Address the New Reality in Science Education, conducted on the 17th of July 2020, signed by Larissa Nomalto or uh, Laika Lamoste, the co-chair of Ateneo Star 2020, Catherine Genevieve B. Lagunsad, Dr. Crisanto M. Lopez, and Dr. Evangeline T. Bautista.
Once again, thank you, Mr. Distor, and thank you, Ms. Gladys Malto, for sharing your study with us today. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure for the participants to hear your study for the third day of AteneoServe 2020. Before we proceed with our last set of oral presentations, please be reminded that you may submit your questions to our presenters, please, using the Zoom chat box only. Kindly send your questions directly to Ms. Laika Lamoste. Again, please search for Ms. Laika Lamoste's name at the Zoom group chat, then address the questions to her. Please include the name of the presenter or his or her topic with your question. If time permits, and I think we have a luxury of time for today, all questions will be entertained during the open forum at the end of this specific stream. The last of the 5 streams attend to determining how our students learned what we taught in class. And I think it really matters that we're not just teaching something to our students, but it's also important to know if they really had obtained something from our class. This stream, feedback and assessment, covers 3 researches as follows: investigating the effects of using student-generated multiple-choice questions in the chemistry achievement of science high school students, to be presented by Ms. Katrina Villar. This will be followed by educational attainment, teaching experience, professional development, and self-efficacy as predictors of chemistry content knowledge, implication for the development of a national promotion examination, to be presented by Ms. Gina Denise Galiza. And lastly, teachers' process skills in science, inputs to training modules development and evaluation, to be presented by Mr. Eufemio Adarayan Jr. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our oral presenters for Stream E.
Hello everyone, so this study is all about investigating the effects of using student-generated multiple choice questions in the chemistry achievement of science high school students. So this is under the mentorship of Dr. Arman Gidote from the Department of Chemistry at the Ateneo de Manila University. So you all know multiple choice questions as commonly prepared by teachers for summative high-stakes assessments. And according to a paper by Walsh in 2018, however, involving students to efficiently generate their own questions for formative evaluation can be in itself a study method and a valuable learning activity. In addition, it was also mentioned by Rosenshine in 1996 that asking students to create their own questions has been viewed as a way for them to focus on content and evaluate their own conceptual understanding. Because when you create your own question, then you try to think of the things that you already know and try to assess or realize the things that you don't know yet about the content. And we have this tool called Peerwise, which is an online tool that allows students to create their own questions, discuss these questions, and share them that so that this could be answered by their classmates. No, this is a good thing about this tool is that it's free. No, so it's accessible online as a website. So this can serve as a low resource platform to promote peer instruction and active learning for the students, which is very important nowadays, given that we have this current shift to online and digital educational formats brought about by the pandemic that we have now. So um, trying to look into tools that could engage students to learn and enhance their performance in assessments would be very important. That's why we try to examine the effects of using student-generated multiple choice questions through the online tool Peerwise to the general chemistry achievement of students from a science high school in the Philippines. Specifically, we want to determine the relationship between the level of their MCQ activity engagement and the final examination score. We want to describe the quality of the output submitted, the questions and the comments in the online learning activity, and try to relate it with their performance in the exam. And lastly, we want to determine the students' perceptions in their participation in the activities in peerwise and its overall contributions to their learning of the content in chemistry. So the the idea is based on Hammer's contribution-based pedagogy, which refers to the creation of learning resources by students to be shared to their other classmates. And the thing is that it was mentioned that when this is done, it can promote deep understanding and cooperative skills. So that's what we want to achieve. So the overall idea would be when the students create high quality questions, then they answer the questions created by peers and they try to create comments that reflect on what they have learned or give comments to give additional learning to the authors of the question, maybe when it comes to improvements or correcting a misconception, then all of those things can contribute to enhance the achievement in chemistry for the students. And this will be all done in an online platform peerwise. So the participants that we have, we 83 students who provided their consent, no? And they are all from 4 of the 8 sections in their batch, which are taught or handled by 4 different teachers for the subject Chemistry 1 in a science high school. So the online tool that was used is Peerwise. So this is the interface. So there they can create the questions and these can be answered by their classmates. And on the right side of this tool, you can see there the reputation score, which increases based on the online tool's algorithm. It says there that if the students answer questions earlier than their peers, or if their questions are highly rated by their peers, or if they rate questions and then subsequently those were rated by their peers, then this could increase. So overall, it's a quantification of how well they engage in the activities in the online tool. No? And then the activities that were required of them, in 2 rounds, they were asked to create at least 1 MCQ, answer at least 5 MCQ, and comment on at least 2 MCQs created by their classmates. So this is a required activity which composed of 3% of their entire grade in Chemistry 1 for the second quarter. So this was done in 2 rounds. The first deadline would be the 4th week, midweek of the quarter, and then the second deadline will be the 8th week, which is a week before their quarter exam. Now, the MCQ quality was rated based on the rubrics adapted from the study of WASE 2019. So the criteria would be the unambiguity of the question, the feasibility of the alternatives, the correctness of the answer key given, the cognitive level of the question, and the given explanation to the answer key provided, because there is a feature in QRS wherein the student could give explanation as to why that correct answer was the answer key for the question created. So there are separate rubrics for the cognitive level and explanation level that were also based in the study of WASE 2019 that was used in the study. And then the comment quality was rated based on 3 levels. So for the level 0, these are non-scientific phrases given like, oh, it's a good question, or it's a good explanation, or good job, or nice job. So those were all rated as level 0. But then when the student introduces phrases of scientific nature but with no discussion, then we level it as level 1 comment. And the highest level, level 2, it's for the comments that has introductions of improvement for ideas, or if the student corrects a misconception or corrects the answer of the question, or if there is a subsequent explanation for the scientific phrases that he mentioned, then that would be rated as level 2 comment. Okay, so the overall process flow chart of the study is that we had orientation activities for all the participants, then we have the implementation of all the activities. Inter-rater reliability was established to check if the way I rate the outputs would be consistent with another co-rater. And then overall, the entire data was collected and evaluated. The students had their quarter examination, then they had also a post-evaluation activity facilitated by their respective Chemistry 1 teachers, and including in that activity is a survey that they have to answer. And then after that, all of the data was organized and analyzed. So the way I presented my data is that first I got to have their first quarter final examination score just to divide them in terms of their prior ability. So we have their four groups or quartiles. So meaning the quartile 4 would be the high-performing students, and the quartile 1 would be the lowest performing students based on their scores from the first quarter exam. So this is the categorization based on prior ability. And then for each quartile, they were further divided in terms of their level of engagement in the pairwise tool. So for those who are higher than the median value of the scores of the repetition score for each quartile, then they were labeled as a high pairwise activity group. And those for those students who are at the lower half of the median of the repetition scores, overall repetition score for each of the quartile, they were labeled as low pairwise activity students. So this data in table 1 describes the total number of student-generated outputs that we have recorded. Overall, the students authored 158 questions. They answered 1,437 and created 400 comments for the entire duration of the study. But in terms of mean values of the overall contribution, it can be noted that the number of MCQ authored is relatively lower than the minimum required as compared to that of the other activities. So it means that most of the students preferred answering, as seen in the value, which is higher than the minimum required as compared to authoring, because probably there is a possibility that question authoring would be time consuming. So it's easier for them to opt to answer more questions than create more questions. Overall, to meet the objective of trying to know the relationship between the level of engagement and their final exam score, so we plot the repetition score versus their final exam score, and we can see that there is a significant, moderately positive correlation between the pairwise repetition score and the final exam score. So this indicates that the more active they were in pairwise, then they were able to get a higher grade in the final exam. But if we try to consider prior abilities, using the student grouping that I mentioned a while ago, so for each of the quartile, it's consistent still that those who are labeled as high pairwise activity students, they have higher mean values of their final exam score as compared to those who were labeled as low pairwise activity students. However, significant difference of the scores between the two is just present in quartile 3 and quartile 4, the higher performing students. Those are the ones who have significant difference for the HPA and LPA groups. Okay, so looking into the effect of the quality. As you can see here, overall, there is a weakly positive but significant correlation between the quality of the MCQ submitted and their final exam performance. So for quartile, there is a similar trend to that of in figure 2, wherein there is a higher score for the HPA as compared to the LPA groups in blue bars, except for quartile 1, but the difference is not really significant. Overall, there is a significant difference of MCQ quality ratings still in between quartile 3 and quartile 4. So this means that the quality of the submitted outputs would be an identifying factor that could have contributed to their good performance as reflected in figure 2 here. And specifically, going over by inspection to the ratings or different criteria of the MCQ quality, it was observed that in the explanation rating, there is still a consistent trend wherein the HPA for all across quartiles have a higher rating than that of those in the LPA group. So meaning those who were active were also providing good explanations for their answer keys of the questions. So the significant difference also still exists between that of the quartile 3 and quartile 4. Overall, the same week, but significant and positive correlation was observed for the overall explanation rating and exam performance. So it tells us that probably this explanation for each of the MCQ is a contributing factor to the enhanced learning, and it can contribute to it can be reflected in the higher exam performance. And lastly, we try to describe the quality and rated the different comments submitted. Overall, it was observed that there is a weak and positive significant correlation between the comment quality and final exam score. In case of considering the prior abilities of the students, it can be seen that the trend is still consistent. All HPAs have highly rated quality comments and as compared to those of the LPA, but the significant difference exists now in quartile 2. Okay. However, if we go back to figure 2, it's not that much reflected. So here, there's no significant difference for the MCQ quality ratings of quartile 3 and quartile 4, even if the mean value would be higher for HPA. So that was not that much reflected for the performance, which is they have the quartile 3 HPA and quartile 4 HPA perform better than the LPA groups. Okay, so yeah, but still there is a weakly positive and significant correlation as per statistical analysis. And lastly, for the perception surveys, overall, there is a positive feedback for the use of MCQ, answering questions, creating questions, and giving comments. But the higher ratings would be for creating the question and answering the question for learning. So the idea of that would have contributed to their learning based on their own perceptions. They also mentioned that they like seeing how their classmates rated their questions, and they thought that the tool was innovative, something new. Okay? And lastly, overall, based on their experience, about 3/4 of the participants thought that they would want to participate in another activity related to the use of pairwise in the future if given the opportunities. Overall, the feedback is generally positive. So the tool and the MCQ activities would be indeed a promising activity for them to learn. So overall, using student-generated MCQs through online tool pairwise to be a potential learning activity that can help the students enhance their achievement in chemistry. And it was also noted that student output quality, specifically for the questioning and explanation of the answer key, it can be an identifying factor that significantly contributes to the learning of content. Thus, it can be reflected into an improved performance in the exam by the students. For recommendations for other researchers, so they can still further conduct studies on the effects of these MCQ activities in the use of pairwise tool for a non-MCQ summative exam. So here, in this case, the tool for the exam is mostly composed of MCQ questions. So what about if it's not so? Will this still be effective? Would there still be a positive correlation for that? Then they could also explore the use of MCQ activities for other STEM subjects, try to look into other contexts, like other settings in varying secondary school levels. Will this still be effective? And for longer periods of time, just to check if the results will be consistent and replicable. And that's it. So these are all my references. Thank you for listening.
Educational attainment, teaching experience, professional development, and self-efficacy as predictor of chemistry content knowledge, implications for the development of a national promotional examination. Gina Denise R. Galiza, Philippine Women's University, Jose Abad Santos Memorial, Quezon City. There is a major concern of the teaching of science in the Philippines due to the poor performance of the Philippines in the benchmarking tests such as the Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study, also known as TIMSS, and the PESA ranking. Because of the direct interaction between teachers and students, the quality of teaching may have a positive or a negative effect on students' learning. Quality of teaching can be equated with competency, efficiency, and the teacher's adequate knowledge of content. McConnell et al. 2013 said that the teacher's content knowledge is the foundation to effectively teach. Satao et al. 2014 said that the teacher's content knowledge serves as an essential tool in teaching science and also integrating concepts in pedagogy. With the K-12 reform, there is a greater concern with regards to the ability of the science teacher to teach properly. One of the main features of the K-12 curriculum is the use of the spiral progression approach. Topics in life sciences, physics, chemistry, and earth sciences are presented in an increasing level of difficulty from grade 7 to 10, thus promoting and deepening the understanding and the mastery of science concepts among learners. Additionally, the content and the skills are presented in a multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary approaches. The main purpose of these approaches is to provide connection among science subjects and other disciplines. For many years, in-service science teachers are expert in a particular subjects. Chemistry was taught by chemistry major, biology was taught by biology majors. With the curricular change, science teachers are now expected to teach all disciplines. This poses a challenge for science teachers as the expectation is that they are adept in all the science subjects. Kind 2014 said that non-chemistry science teachers' knowledge is deficient in teaching chemistry concept in high school in spite of their possession of an academic degree. TOSCI, UP Miss Med, 2017, said that the science educators may have a field of specialization or major in college, but then again, it is indispensable that the teacher should have the breadth of knowledge across other science disciplines. The main objective of this study is to assess the level of the chemistry CK of teachers in grades 7 to 10. This aims to find out if the variables such as chemistry background, teaching experience, involvement in the professional development activities, and self-efficacy are the predictors of the CK or the chemistry content of teachers. The variables were correlated to the level of the CK in chemistry. This work may serve as a baseline of teachers' performance. The result of the work may also be used as a basis for drafting a national promotional examination for teachers. This proposed examination is meant to strongly encourage teachers to improve their CK. Content knowledge is defined as the disciplinary conceptual knowledge of the teachers. McConnell et al. 2013 described a teacher's CK as the foundation to effectively teach inside the classroom. Teachers need to understand and master the scientific concept that they teach to be able to perform more complex tasks in teaching science. An effective science teacher is confident in teaching the subject matter. It simply implies that the teacher knows the content and can effectively teach using appropriate strategies. Studies show that the CK alone is insufficient to effectively teach science. A study by Fleur, 2009, found out that the lack of science CK causes the incapability of educators to teach science effectively. And the factor accountable for the variances in the quality of teaching is the difference in the teacher's content knowledge. Shawcross et al. 2002. Diamond et al. 2014 found out that the professional development intervention helped improve teacher CK. The teachers who participated in an intervention program demonstrated significant increase in the teacher's science knowledge. Research paradigm. The research paradigm shows that the chemistry background, teaching experience, involvement in professional development, and self-efficacy as a predictor of chemistry content knowledge. The result will serve as a basis for the proposed national promotional examination for the public school science teacher. The national promotional examination is a mechanism to help teachers develop mastery of the content knowledge. This study utilizes the descriptive correlation of research. It was conducted in the 10 public secondary high school in the city of Manila. Participants were grade 7 to 10 science teacher in the K-12 program. These teachers are expected to teach all the science subjects including chemistry. Five principals and head teachers also participated in the study. 4 instruments were used in the study: chemistry CK test, chemistry background and teaching experience checklist, professional development checklist, and self-efficacy scale. Results. Table 1 showed the distribution of chemistry content knowledge scores of respondents. Table 1 shows that 65 respondents scored between 36 and below. The level of the chemistry content of most teachers was low, even though 18% of the sample population have a baccalaureate degree specializing in chemistry, and 68% of the population have a units and master's program. The total mean of the score of the chemistry CK was 31.74. On average, the teachers were in the beginning level only. More than the majority of the science teacher had insufficient knowledge in chemistry, despite their possession of an appropriate baccalaureate degree and even units in higher education. 20% of the respondents were approaching proficiency, while 2% was proficient in the test that determined the level of CK in chemistry. Table 2 shows the percentage of the correct answer per concept area by the respondents as shown in the content knowledge test. The data shows that the least mastered content area is the chemistry. In the area of chemistry where biomolecules, metals, and nonmetals, matter and its properties, periodic table of elements, and particle nature of matter. All the respondents were collectively scored below 75 in all topics in chemistry. From grade 7 to 10, it can be deduced that the science teacher lacked expertise and mastery of the subject matter. Table 3, Pearson correlation of CK in chemistry to selected variables. The correlation between chemistry CK and TE, chemistry CK and PD, CCK and SE, and chemistry CK and TE, CCK and CB were statistically significant. It can be noted that the association between the CK and chemistry background is small. This may be attributed to the non-alignment or non-specialization of the baccalaureate to master's and doctoral degree the respondents have obtained. The correlation between the teaching experience and the CK in chemistry is likewise small. The finding indicates that the number of years in the teaching does not equate to becoming a content expert in a specific field. Though majority of the respondents were master teacher, the rank does not make them adept with content. The multiple regression analysis was used to identify which among the independent variables greatly affect the teacher's level of CK in chemistry. The result of the multiple regression analysis is presented in Table 4. Table 4 shows that the CB, SE, and PD have a p-value less than or equal to 0.05. This indicates that the null hypothesis must be rejected. Therefore, the predictors CB, PD, and SC have a linear relationship with the variable y, chemistry CK. From the result of this analysis, one can conclude that the more involvement of the teachers to a PD activity, the more he or she increases one's CK. Additionally, SE among the teachers should also be enhanced because of the regression analysis found the relationship with CK and SE. Involvement in the PD activities and SE have greatly affected the CK of the teachers. Conclusion. The majority of the science teacher handling grades 7 to 10 have a low level of CK and chemistry, despite their possession of a degree, units and masters, and a substantial teaching experience. They are likely considered as beginner only, not content expert. The variables such as TE, PD, CB, and SE are significantly correlated to the CK of the teachers in chemistry. Teachers' PD and the self-efficacy exerts the strongest influence in the development of content knowledge of teachers. The CB exerts a weak influence in the upliftment of the chemistry CK among teachers. Recommendations. School must provide a more in-depth training focusing both content and pedagogy. More frequent and longer PD activities must be given to teachers since it is proven that it will greatly affect their CK in science. Training of the teachers should be done with the guidance of an expert, not only in chemistry but also in other subject areas. The criteria for teacher promotion should be revisited and establish 2 tracks. Administrative and teaching tracks should be considered. The list of my references. Thank you.
Together with the co-authors of this paper, Mr. Ivan Colaba and Dr. Joel T. Makiling of the Ateneo de Manila University, let me present our paper on teachers' process skills in science, inputs to training modules development and evaluation. I am Eufemio Adarayan Jr. Let me present to you some data points that will give us a picture of the state of science education in the country. Just a disclaimer though, these do not paint the entirety of our system. Rather, they highlight some of the challenges that we need to address. First, in the Trends in International Math and Science Study in 2003 result, our country ranked 67th out of 71. Second, in the latest result by the Program for International Student Assessment, for scholastic performance in science, we ranked 78th out of 79. These figures give us an idea on how our learners fare with the rest of their peers in the world, or at least in the participating country in the 2 surveys. Now let's look at our own assessment, the DepEd's National Achievement Test. For the result in 2015, the latest figure shows that science achieved the lowest mean percentage score. And the latest result from DepEd's Bureau of Education Assessment revealed that in their survey conducted where they measured the teachers' process skills in science and mathematics, the overall rating was 62.54%, which is just barely above the 60% passing mark as set by the Department of Education. This prompted us to conduct this study. If we want quality output, which is that of a student's performance, we must give quality input. And one of these factors in this quality input is the teacher's skills. Why the skills? These skills refer to the science process skills of teachers. These are the skills needed in conducting an investigation, which is very much crucial in science education. These are the questions we tried to answer in this study. First, what is the level of competence of the teacher's science process skills before the training program? Second, what should be the design of the training program so as to enhance the teacher's science process skills? And finally, what is the level of competence of the teacher's science process skills after the training program? These are the series of steps that we took in conducting this study. First, we crafted a pre-assessment that measured the science process skills of the teachers. This was validated by experts and was eventually administered to the participants, the results of which was interpreted. And this gave us an idea on what training program to be developed. This was eventually administered, implemented as a form of in-service training. And a post-assessment was administered to measure the gains by the teachers. And a subsequent interpretation was made. This table shows you the pre-assessment results for the teacher's science process skills. Listed in the table are the 8 process skills tested. We have classifying, predicting, observing, estimating, interpreting, measuring, inferring, and communicating. We have set the cutoff score of 60% as the fairly satisfactory mark according to the Department of Education. As you can see, only the estimating skill was able to achieve the fairly satisfactory mark, and all the rest of the science process skills did not make it. Most notably were the skills of measuring, inferring, and communicating, which got the 3 of the lowest mark. The results of the pre-assessment yielded the following main takeaways. First, the participants confused the definition of one science process skill from another. This was most prevalent between measuring and estimating skills. Predictions were also mistaken as inferences or observations. Second, an observation was considered to be an explanation of an event. Instead of articulating what was perceived by the senses as an observation, the participants view an interpretation or an explanation of the phenomenon as a proper way of observing. Next, there was an unfamiliarity with common measuring techniques. It was found out that the teachers were unfamiliar with proper procedures in measuring. For example, taking the temperature of a liquid inside a glassware. They also lacked the skill in ensuring precision when measuring. Next, the units of physical quantities are unfamiliar, making estimations difficult. The pretest revealed that the participants were unfamiliar with units of physical quantities for temperature that caused inabilities for them to make sound estimations. Next, it was found to be that the participants had difficulty in constructing appropriate graphs for a given set of data. It was found that organizing data into graphs were an issue to the participants. When asked to construct one, they failed to plot the appropriate type of variable in the corresponding axis in the graph. It was also revealed that they lacked the skills in giving the appropriate titles and axis labels in the graph they constructed. Lastly, there was a difficulty in interpreting graphs, tables, and textual data. The participants experienced difficulties in making appropriate interpretations of data presented. They found difficulties in finding trends and patterns in data. In effect, making extrapolations of a given trend of data a problem to them. In light of the results of the pre-assessment, we opted to adopt the active learning methodology in physics as a way of addressing the science process skills of teachers. Under this methodology is the PODS learning model, which is a strategy that is an acronym that stands for prediction, observation, discussion, and synthesis. This is a learning model where students are called to predict before making actual observations in an investigation. After they make observations, learners should reconcile their insights as they discuss key concepts. Then, knowledge and skills are required when learners are able to synthesize concepts presented in the lesson or investigation. How does the PODS learning model address the need to increase or enhance the science process skills of the teachers? We have prediction, observation, discussion, and synthesis as part of the PODS learning model. And we have the 8 science process skills that our teachers need to improve. So in the prediction phase, we can address the skills in obviously predicting, estimating, and observing. During the observation phase, the teachers or the learners can practice their skills in estimating, observing, measuring, and classifying. During the discussion phase, our learners can use their skills in communicating, interpreting, and inferring for their discussion of the results of their observation. And for the synthesis phase, our learners can use their skills in communicating and inferring. Here is a sample activity sheet that we used during the training. And this particular activity deals with the science of tropical cyclone formation, specifically that of the heat engine. So in this particular section, the first part calls for our learners to predict what will happen to the piston if they dip the flask on the reservoir with water at room temperature. So obviously, this is the prediction part of the activity. And after they predicted, they will implement the procedures in the activity, and then they will collect their data. So that is the observation part. So in this section here, they are to interpret what they have gathered and what they have interpreted in the graph. So this is the discussion part. And finally, they are to generalize or synthesize the findings that they got from the activity, which will cover the synthesis part. This table shows you the training matrix we designed for the training program. It spanned 5 days and we covered topics in disaster science, specifically that of earthquakes and tropical cyclones. The activities featured here are modules designed using the active learning as the training methodology. Here's a couple of photos taken during the in-service training for teachers. And as you can see here, they are actively doing the activities we have designed for them using the PODS learning cycle. And here's a photo of a sample experimental setup from the activity sheet I have featured a while ago. After we implemented the teachers training program for science process skills enhancement, we administered a post-assessment. And this table shows you the teacher's performance in the post-test vis-a-vis their performance in the pre-test. As you can see, there is a noticeable increase in their performance in all the science process skills tested, from classifying to predicting, to observing, estimating, interpreting, measuring, inferring, and communicating. There were modest gains observed in estimating skill, but there was substantial gains in measuring and communicating. These are the main takeaways from the interpretation of the post-assessment. First, there was an increased competence in measuring quantities. The participants were able to take measurements of quantities they were provided during the test. They reported their measurements following techniques in establishing precision, and there was also a marked improvement in their use of common measuring instruments that were utilized in the training. Second, there was an improved articulation of predictions. There was an observed improvement in the way the participants stated their predictions, that is, the use of future verb tenses, providing explanations to support their prediction. Third, better reporting of observations. The post-test performance showed that the participants made adequate reporting of their observations. They were able to use precise terms in their observations, and they reported in complete sentences as compared to mere words or phrases in the pre-test. Lastly, there was an adeptness in construction of appropriate graphs to organize the data. There was an observed improvement in the way participants organize their data. They were able to discern which type of graph suits which data they are given. Graph elements such as proper graph and axis labels were also evident in most of the responses. They were also able to make sufficient interpretations of the trends found on graphs. This leads us in forming the conclusion that the teacher's competence was enhanced by the in-service training on science process skills. Of course, we want teachers to be experts in the fields that they are teaching. For example, in the science process skills in the post-test, they were not able to reach 100% or at least close to 100% in their performance. However, what this training revealed that these teachers are capable of improving themselves given the proper venue. And these are my recommendations. Active learning can be utilized in designing in-service training for teachers. Further improvement in the training modules should be made to fit to other contexts. Include science process skills as part of targets in teachers' training, and varying formats or modalities should be investigated on the effectiveness of active learning as a training method. And these are the references I used. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much to our three presenters, Ms. Katrina Villar, Ms. Gina Denise Galiza, and Mr. Eufemio Adarayan Jr. Can I ask the presenters to please turn all your cameras and microphones on for the open forum? Thank you. Okay, at this point, allow me to read some of the questions that are sent to our Zoom chat box. Let's begin with Ms. Villar. Ms. Katrina, you're here. Hello, good morning. I think your microphone's muted. Hello. Hi. Oh, we can't hear you. Anyway, let's give this first question. Actually, it is a suggestion. Okay, suggestion, Miss Villar. There is a study conducted by Arlene de la Cruz and Amelia Punzalan in UP NISMED with regard to the levels of students' questions in learning chemistry. You might want to look on their study also. Okay, let's begin with the question now. Thank you for sharing your study. Ms. Villar, how do you think can this method be effective in an online class teaching? How can teachers weigh the quality of questions raised and the quality of questions answered?
Good morning po. So for that question, I think the good thing about the tool is that it's accessible online. So you can give the link to the students and you can use it in a variety of ways. You can ask them to use this as a supplementary activity with a minimum grade requirement. So it could act as a requirement. But in my case, we use it as an alternative activity for instead of using a traditional homework, so the students may opt to do the question creating activity. So, or in some other studies, they use this as a bonus activity. But overall, the effect would be in case of the teachers, you can be able to see how your students do their questions, what would be their possible misconceptions, or what are their strengths in terms of understanding the lessons that you've delivered. So I guess yeah, that would be helpful. And then in terms of the quality, we assess the quality in terms of a more stringent rubric. Like we looked into the unambiguity of the question, or the choices all possible, or if the question or the answer to the question is correct, scientifically correct. So you can also use that, and at the same time use the leveling, the cognitive level from Bloom's taxonomy. So we can introduce first to the students what are the lots, what are the hots, and then when they have that idea, then they can think about
how to create a question that would target their higher order thinking skills. I think it's very important for the students to know first the idea behind the activity. Why are they being asked to do this kind of activity? And when they appreciate it, I think they can think well about how to develop their own higher order thinking skills by creating good questions that target that kind of skill.
Definitely. Okay. Thank you for that response. Let's have one more question. Can the teacher verify the validity of the questions, choices, and answers that are posted on Peerwise? Or is it entirely reliant on popular opinion inside the classroom? Are the students' identity revealed as they post, or do they do it anonymously?
Uh, when the Peerwise tool was created, I think it was for the purpose of the activity to be student-led, with minimal to no intervention from the instructor. But yes, you can do comment on their creation when you have the instructor account, the administration account, so you can be able to see all of the student contributions. You have the access to that. So for the students, they are anonymous, so they don't know who created the question, they don't know who's commenting, but as you as having the instructor account, you can know who they are, so you can intervene. Like if you can see a question with misconceptions, and you can comment as a teacher. You can just say that you are their teacher commenting there. But overall, when we've done the activity for the research, it's purely student led. So no teacher intervention was done, so that we can see how the students flow with their contributions.
I think anonymity is important here because the question, I mean the meat of the question will not really matter at this point because if the students know the source of the question, then that definitely their response would be altered or would be modified. So yes, okay. I think that's it for Miss Villar. Thank you, Miss Villar. Let's proceed to our next presenter, Miss Galiza. Miss Gina Denise, you're here.
Hello, sir.
Oh, okay. So let's have our first question. What specific training program can you recommend to the schools to enhance the content mastery of the teachers?
First, the teaching professional development program should address the content and also the pedagogy, noting that it can be in formal setting or formal setting. So I would say na dapat there's a content, it can focus on the least mastered content of the teachers, for example, metos and non-metos, and then in the course of the professional development, they could have a short course or a seminar and even a workshop on how to actually teach that content.
Okay, thank you. Um, uh, second question is Second question I think is somehow similar to the first, but allow me to read it. What possible trainings and workshops can you recommend for schools to give to teachers to enhance mastery in terms of content? So I think it's the same thing. Maybe anytime soon you can share to our participants. I don't know by what means, because some of us here, me personally, would be interested to attend to such training and workshop program. Okay. This is the last one, I guess. Okay. Can you enlighten us what inspired you in creating this research? I'm thinking of developing a similar study. Wow. And your work has made me curious on doing parallel research.
Um, Basically, I'm not a chemistry teacher, so I also have difficulties. From that, I would say that other teachers also with the same problem as me, that uh, I am a biology teacher, but I have to teach all the different disciplines. So I think that this study would benefit everybody that is interested or probably going through the things that I am going also.
I think it's good that we see and understand the problems, the challenges that every teacher experiences, so that upon recognizing this, we can identify some solutions. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, that's the last question for you, Miss Denise. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's proceed to our last but not the least presenter for the entire conference, Mr. Femi.
Oh,
You're here.
yes, I'm here.
Hi, good morning. Okay. Our first
Good
question
morning.
is, your study is very helpful for in-service teacher training institutions. I would like to collaborate from you soon, probably if I can get your email from your abstract or to the organizers. This is from Miss Gatan. I'm interested as
Okay,
well.
sure.
Sharing. Okay. Can you please tell us the demographics of the teacher participants? Thank you.
Okay, first let me respond to the comment. So I would love to collaborate with that, with you on future researches, maybe along these lines of the topics of my research. Now, the demographics of the participants of the studies are junior high school teachers from public science high schools in the countryside.
Mm,
So that's the
mm.
demographic. So basically, the bulk of the pool of teachers in the country, which are not found in the NCR. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That would give us an idea on how to describe your respondents. Thank you. Okay, let's have a second one. What steps would you plan to take to apply the results of your study on a larger scale?
Yes, very much. I would love to share the results of my study and to pursue this study on a larger scale. And as a person, as a teacher from the Department of Education, so I am bound to present my study in the department. So maybe I can explore avenues of increasing the depth of this study to reach other teachers from different contexts of the country.
Okay. Third question. I am just wondering, how do you administer your pre and post test? Are there any differences or how are they different?
Okay, so the pre and the post assessments are basically the same set of examinations. And I administered the pre-test 2 months before the training program for us with the co-authors to really scrutinize and to analyze where the baseline of our data and to really extract the the best possible data so we can use it in the design of the training program. And the post assessment was administered after the training program was implemented. And obviously, in the results of my study, there was a significant difference in the scores of the teachers pre versus post assessment. However, the gains were modest. We would want that the teachers to achieve really high scores because, of course, we want to have teachers who are experts in their fields in the fields that they are teaching. So that's it.
Thank you. Okay. This would be the last for you, Mr. Adarayan. Would a 5-day training sustainable? Would a 5-day training be sustainable to address teachers' loopholes on process skills?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, but my internet connection is quite
It's okay.
unstable right now. But I allow me to answer the part of the question I was able to catch. So the training program only lasted for 5 days, and obviously, for a successful training program or a professional development course, it should be lengthy. There must be a significant amount of time that the teachers must spend in that particular training program or development course. However, as per the results of our study, there were gains, albeit modest. And as part of my recommendations of the study, is to really implement this training program not only in a larger scale, but also in a more substantial time for the course or training.
Definitely. Okay. This just came in. We have one more question for you. Have you
Okay.
encountered any problem or difficulty in the conduct of your study?
Of course, there will always be obstacles, problems in the conduct of any study,
Yeah.
particularly in my study because I was dealing with teachers who are in service. And so I had to really negotiate with their school heads so that they will be available on these certain periods of time where the training program will be conducted. So that's one of the major obstacles I encountered. And particularly on the attendance of the teachers, I have to admit that there was not a sustained 100% attendance of the teachers. In fact, we were not able to achieve 100% attendance for all the training sessions that we had with the teachers. So I think that could be one factor that we can explore, that further researchers can explore in investigating the effects of that in the gains of the teachers.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Femi Adarayan. Once again, thank you to
Thank
our
you.
three presenters for today, and thank you as well to our plenary speaker a while ago, Ms. Gladys Malto. Maybe we can give them a round of applause by please clicking the clap reaction below at the reaction pane to recognize that. Thank you very much to our participants. All right, we have almost reached the end of the AteneoServe 2020. We hope that whatever you've gained in attending these talks would serve as points of reflection. Points of reflection to evaluate our current practices and improve our strategies to address the need for 21st century ready, scientifically literate, environmentally and socially responsible Filipinos. To formally close our program, this breaks my heart, but we have to reach the end. To formally close our program, may we call on the pride of the MS Science Education community, our Science Education Coordinator from the School of Science and Engineering of the Ateneo de Manila University. Please welcome Dr. Catherine Genevieve Lagunzad.
Good morning, everyone. This is a historic moment in the 30 years of my stay at the Ateneo de Manila University. At no time in my life have I been able to gather my students from way back in the DEX NAEAP MBIED days in the early 1990s, my DOST, CDP, SME, MSSE scholars and students of 2020. I feel so blessed. As educators, we believe that if our students are given an excellent education and proper training, as educators, we believe that if our students are given an excellent education and proper training, instilled with good work ethics and positive attitude, their lives and their future could have endless possibilities. But strong as our belief is, the reality is we are in the midst of a pandemic. There is a lot of fear within us. Fear of the unknown, fear of the uncertainty, fear of the growing expectations, fear of not meeting our deadlines, fear of failure. And yet, here we are, out of our hiding places, out of our comfort zones. Why? Because we believe in the science. And we simply cannot let the flames of the torch we carry for science education to flicker nor grow dim. We recognize the value of coming together. And as Dr. Josette Bio said in her awe-inspiring keynote address on the first day of AteneoServe 2020, we come together because we know we are bound as one by a common vision and mission. Because we understand that with our unquenchable thirst for knowledge, the work of our minds, our hands, our hearts, coupled with a generous act of volunteerism, help in whatever capacity we can rise above this crisis. And I quote from Dr. Bio, "In these very difficult times, no amount of help is too little nor too big. The country needs all the help that we can give. Together, let us heal as one." For our oral presenters and our poster exhibitors, you are here to prove your worth, to carve your own future by the richness of your ideas, the quality of your work, the goodness of your hearts, and the radiance of your spirits. Some papers, such as those on augmented reality, hazard hunter, differentiated instruction, video analysis and modeling, game-based response system for formative assessments. All of this gave us a preview and some practical tips to demonstrate how to transform our standard face-to-face instruction into digital or online teaching and learning. And it fills me with great pride that even as most of you have the necessary devices and resources for digital transformation in science education, in your respective schools, many of your studies try to address the needs of those who have the least in terms of access to online learning, pocket gardening, urban agriculture, green chemistry, fabricated microscopes, use of discarded plastic bottles to study lens property, just to name a few. In this virtual engagement, you, our speakers, our poster exhibitors, you gave every participant something useful to take home with them, to help them build their own resources as they prepare themselves to teach in the new normal, implementing DepEd's learning continuity plan. For the hosts and the organizers, the Dean of the School of Science and Engineering, Dr. Evangeline Bautista, the Chair of the Biology Department, Dr. Crisanto Lopez, the MSSE faculty, Dr. Nestor Valera, Dr. Armando Guidote, Mr. Ivan Kulaba. We are all here for you because we believe in the value of what we do. We understand that we can contribute by creating opportunities for our science teachers. And we hope that you learn from this example, that you too will open opportunities, not only to your fellow teachers, but for your students. We will support you in providing quality science education for the next generation because it can help shape the future of our country and of our people. For the hardworking team of AteneoServe 2020, Gladys Ann Malto, the conference chair, Laika Lamoste, the co-chair, Exedy Lampara, Arven Lucas, Oliver Jan Distor, Lavi Cornel Subang, Charis Senas, Winfer Tabares, Paulo Antonio Gonzalez, and our rising star, Mark Ordonio, and all the others who in some measure helped in the performance of our task. This is our very first attempt to do an online conference and to use Zoom Meet as our video conference platform. And let me ask ourselves, why did we do this to ourselves? In the course of over a month of organizing, planning, and preparations, we rediscovered who we truly are by what we know, by what we believe, by what we can do, and what we value. It is knowing how far we can be pushed to the edge and still come out fighting. It is exploring our thoughts and giving them a voice. It is facing our fears, feeling our pains, accepting our failures on a day-to-day basis, but making sure that our hearts are still in the right place. This pandemic will not be the only crisis we will be faced over the course of our lives. And science teaches us that for every problem, there is a potential solution just waiting to be tested. And together, where do we go from here? We joined this conference 3 days ago, and the world may stay the same when we leave in a few hours. Nothing much would have changed. We will still be expected to adapt to this new normal, but we can take home with us every little bit of knowledge, every trace of skill, every ounce of strength, and every ray of hope. And like foot soldiers on a mission, we will trudge forward and never back down to ensure quality science education for all in the country that we love the most. And as Father Johnny Go reminded us in his plenary talk yesterday, we don't have to do it all alone. In this mission, we can trust in the knowledge that we can count on each other. We will not just come together to heal as one nation, but we will come together to grow and to prosper as one. And while the steps we may take may make us falter or fall, we will pick each other up. We will gather again and again, if need be, to learn from each other. There are no small minds, only small dreams. No task too daunting, only frail spirits. We are only as big as our dreams, as strong as our faith, as heroic as our hearts. And so, patriot scholars and patriot educators, it is an honor and a privilege to be called teacher and to be amongst fellow teachers like you. Thank you for spending precious time with us. God bless the Philippines. God bless us all. AteneoServe 2020. We'll see each other again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kathy. I think having with you for our closing remarks, the program really deserves to have you to wrap up everything. I am actually smiling at your entire speech, not just because I'm seeing some of those whose cameras are on are already sobbing while you were giving us a speech, but how can I say this? My heart is full. My heart is more than full for Ateneo, for the Department of Biology, for the School of Science and Engineering, for everyone who are here, for the opportunity that you've given to us, scholars, students, and alumni, and to even the participants who are here today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for everyone. Without each and every one of you, this event would not be possible. From the bottom of my hypothalamus, again, thank you to everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe not this time, not using the reaction button for clapping, but can I see everyone's hands? If we give everyone a round of applause, loud as much as possible, even if your microphones are muted. We're done. Yes, we're almost done. Wait, we're about to end pa lang pala. Okay. Before we part ways, can we please remind everyone that the virtual poster exhibit will still be continuing and will end at 5 p.m. by this date. The link is shown on the screen, AteneoServe2020.wordpress.com. But again, this website will only be accessible to the participants on this Zoom meeting or those who have received notifications from the respective emails. Viewers may give questions to the poster presenters at an allotted space within the virtual exhibit. For the poster presenters, you are expected to respond to these questions via email. Okay, next. Evaluation. The link for today's evaluation can be accessed from the link shown on your screen. It's bit.ly/serve3rd. Again, the link for today's evaluation is shown at your screen. That's bit.ly/serve3rd. Your certificate of attendance will only be given upon accomplishment of the form from this link until 5 p.m. today. Good morning, everyone. I am Mark Ordonio. It's a pleasure to be your Master of Ceremony for the first online science education conference. And on behalf of the steering committee, thank you very much for your attendance to AteneoServe 2020. To our Indonesian friend, terima kasih banyak. This is just the beginning. The real learning is when we apply all these ideas to our classes. I wish you luck as you prepare to your virtual classes anytime soon. God bless us all and have a great day ahead. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
All the members of the steering committee, turn on your microphone and let us see our guests, okay, out of our virtual hall. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you po.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ma'am Cathy.
You're welcome. Teka, sino yung boses na yon?
Thank you po for attending.
Hello, Ma'am Cathy. Tess po. Si Tess from...
Tess, nako, all the way
Yeah,
from Dubai.
UAE. I waited.
I know. Yes.
How do we
Thank you so much po. Nice to see you.